Hi everyone, it's Lou Collins. Today I want to show you a project that I've created using the John Next Door Spring Special kit. Now this entire box is filled with not only a really inspirational project magazine but also lots of crafting goodies for you to play with too. Now when I created this card, which is actually the card that's on the front but a slightly different version of it, I used the step-by-step magazine that's in the box and I followed the instructions to make sure that I was getting the measurements right and so on and so forth. And you can find lots and lots of different step-by-step projects in here, but there's also lots of elements in the kit that I didn't use on this card, so stay tuned for the end where I'll flick through everything else that's included in the box. Now if we flick to page 18, this is the card from the front cover and this is the one that I wanted to recreate. As you can see, I did go with slightly different colours. I just picked purples instead of pinks, and I've got a full materials list and instructions here to follow, but I'm going to show you how we created this beautiful background. It's all explained in here and only using the items in the kit and a little bit of cardstock and adhesive. So this card requires you to use the die set, and there's so many dies included here. We've got this tiered cake, we've got the icing, we've got floral embellishments for it. We've also got some nesting dies here in a circle. We've got the circular pin dot detail and we've got the scalloped edge as well. We've got candles, we've got the stands as well for your tiers. If you really want to make a dramatic wedding cake, for example, there's lots going on, even bows. So we've got all of those cutting dies, and then we've also got this beautiful folder. This is an embossing folder. It's around about 6 by 6 inches, and it's a full-sized one. It's amazing that we get this included in the kit. Now John Lockwood has designed this card himself, and he's used a really fun and creative way of creating your own backing papers. Now as you saw when I flicked through, there's actually pattern papers in the magazine. I'm not going to be using those. Now I've decided rather than redoing this card exactly, I'm actually going to just switch over these two purples to give me a slightly different look. So I'm going to be using this slightly warmer mauve colour or purple colour for the card today for the background. So I'm going to place my card inside my embossing folder. Now usually when I do this, I tend to put it in the folder, and with a large pair of scissors I very roughly cut around the folder, and then I trim everything afterwards. So just like so, and then round like that, because there's always an edge to any embossing folder design, and I tend to trim this off. So there's no need for me to go in and accurately cut this straight away. So now moving over to my die cutting machine. Now opening this embossing folder up, you can see that we've got a beautiful embossed floral detail there. I've had a little bit of cracking on the surface of my cardstock. There was quite heavy pressure there. So some of this has gone a little bit white. That's because I've got a white core to my cardstock. This wouldn't happen if you had a solid core, the solid colour running all the way through the card. But it's not enough white for the look we're going for. So in the magazine, what's explained to do is to use a white ink pad. Now I like to use a pigment ink pad because the pigment sits on top of the paper and it doesn't fade. A dye ink pad, that will fade into a darker colour cardstock. I'm keeping this inside the embossing folder at the moment because this is going to hold it in place firstly, but it's also going to, as I'm brushing over, I'm going to be pressing, adding a little bit of pressure to the ink pad, and the last thing I want to do is press all of that emboss back down again. So by doing that this way, I am ensuring that I keep the pattern pressed upwards while I'm working on it. And I'm just going to keep going over until I'm happy that I've picked out enough of the detail. Now I've used the Distress ink in Picket Fence, but there's lots of other white pigment inks around there. And then I can release this from the folder, and we've created our own really beautifully textured patterned paper. Now rather than matting this onto a squared card base as I did the first time, I'm matting this onto a scalloped one. So I've trimmed the edges down to size for this. Now this just shows you that for each and every one of the card tutorials that is in the project magazine, you're going to be able to put your own spin on them 2, 3, 4 times, changing little things for a different look. So essentially you've actually got really hundreds of different cards that you can be creating using the elements that's in the kit and using the inspiration in the magazine as well. So now I've got my card base, I'm going to go to the embellishments, and the first thing I need to do is add the scalloped circle, and that's using these two dies. So I've gone with the light colour purple here, or the lilac, and I've used the scalloped die alongside the die that's sitting just inside it on the packet. And this is a pin dot circle, so it doesn't cut out for you, but it does add a really beautiful pin dot detail around the inside edge of that circle. So that's going to sit just on my card here. Now what I tend to like to do when I'm building a card, I like to place everything down as I'm cutting, as I'm stamping, etc. And then I glue it mostly at the end, all but a few final pieces here and there. So that way, if I change my mind about anything, nothing's final, nothing's completely stuck down. So I'm just going to lay everything over there. Now the next layer we need is a white circle, and that's using the plain circular die that comes in the set as well. So that's going to sit over your circle, and you can still see the pin dot around the edge there. Save your white cardstock because you are going to need some more of that in a little while. Next, I need to build up the actual cake, and you've got all the dies to do this. You've got, as I say, the sponge tiers, you've got the stands, you've got the icing as well. So you just need to work through which ones you want to use. Are you going to make this 3-tier or even taller? Or maybe you just want it 1 or 2 tier. Do you want the stands included? Do you want the icing on it? Do you want the icing to be maybe jam inside a layer, for example? There's lots of different options with this. So on to the purple, the deep purple that I'm going to use. I'm going to place 3 of the tiers. So there's the medium, large and small. I'm going to try and use one small piece of tape to take them all down together. And then I'm also going to add the icing dies, and they again come in small, medium and large. And I'm going to cut these from a white. Now these die cuts are really easy to put together, but it's important to remember that if you're using the icing, the tiers of the cake actually need to be wider at the top than they are at the bottom, which gives it a sort of fun, almost comical look. So I'm going to do the 3 layers, glue them together and position them on my card base. And at this stage, I think I'm safe to start gluing things together. Now also from the pale lilac coloured cardstock, I'm going to cut the candles out, and I'm going to cut a couple of these dies that have floral elements cut into them. Now these are created to actually create floral corners, for example, on your card layers or your card base. But what drops out of them is beautiful flowers that you can then arrange on your cake as well. So you've kind of got a 2-for-1 with these. Now I've cut out 3 of the little candles out of lilac, and I'm just going to use a yellow pen to darken the flame on each of them. Although this won't show up as bright yellow on here because this is an alcohol pen and the ink just soaks into the cardstock, but it will still show up as a slightly different colour. Lastly now, all I'm going to do is with a wet glue attach the candles and the florals. These are really tiny little pieces, so it might be helpful to use something as I am, like some tweezers, just to place things exactly where you want them. And you've got both large and small flowers here, so you've got a choice of which ones to use. You can scatter them about, you can put multiples on there, or of course if you want to make this card maybe a little more masculine, for example, you could just decide not to use the flowers. And in fact that brings me to the next bit, which is going to be looking at what else is in this box kit. So as you can see, taking inspiration from the one card, I've created so far 2 different cards already, and the same can be done with all of the different tutorials in the magazine. So I'm going to flick through to the middle here, because what you also have included here are some absolutely beautiful pattern papers that you can be using with your projects. And not only are these pattern papers, but you also get some almost ephemera, some toppers, some sentiments and some ribbon strips as well. So they are absolutely stunning. And then not only that, you also get, besides the die and the embossing folder that we've been using, there's also a stamp set included too. Now the stamp set, you can stamp and cut out your cakes, you can add balloons, you've got lots of elements there that you can be using alongside the die set, alongside the embossing folder, completely on its own, whichever you wish. And there'll be tutorials for each and every one of these different variations within the magazine for you as well. So I hope you enjoyed watching that, and I hope you love this kit as much as I do. You can find all the details down below for where to pick up yours. Thank you everybody, and I'll see you again very soon.